Guess you weren't expecting it.
What the hell is going on?
We have now reached the junction.
I'm Anna. I'm your Afterlife coordinator.
That's not a job. Joan! Joan!
I was in bed and then I...
You look amazing. I have shocking news. You're dead.
I never dreamt you this clearly.
You're exactly how I dreamt you.
Oh, no.
You waited 67 years.
When eternity's on the line, seems like nothing.
It's a good opener.
We end up just as long as we're together.
Have you chosen your eternity?
On their way to a party, elderly couple Larry and Joan keep arguing about every topic that comes to their minds. They're so distracted that they almost crash into another car. When they finally make it to their son's house, Larry covers the bandage on Joan's arm with her sleeve and reminds her that she needs to tell the family about her cancer. Joan asks for one more day because she doesn't want to ruin their grandchild's gender reveal party. The family greets them with a warm welcome and teases them about their 65 years of marriage. They also tell Joan they found a box of her old pictures in the basement. One of the photos is of Joan's wedding to her first husband, Luke, who died during the war. Meanwhile, Larry is eating some pretzels when suddenly he starts choking. He struggles to breathe and collapses on the floor. Seconds later, Larry is shocked to wake up in a train with pink confetti falling on his head. A kid in an oversized suit says Larry wasn't expecting it before walking away. When the train stops at the station, Larry notices that many passengers are wearing hospital gowns. He follows the passengers until he reaches a crowded area called the Junction, where lots of people tell him things he doesn't understand. Larry tells the receptionist that he's been abducted, but she assures him he wasn't and tells him to wait until his AC comes for him. A few hours later, most of the crowd has left and Larry is napping on the chairs. He's awakened by Anna, who introduces herself as his AC. This stands for Afterlife Coordinator, which means Larry has died. Larry tries to deny it, but at the same time, he sees the confetti and realizes his grandkid is a girl. Anna makes Larry look at himself in the mirror, and he finally notices he's young again, proving her story. She explains that when people reach the junction, their forms revert to their happiest selves. As Anna guides him through the building, Larry keeps insisting he must go back to his wife, so Anna slaps him to make him stop whining. She also clarifies that this isn't paradise. It's a short moment between life and eternity. At that moment, they hear an alarm and Larry sees a man being tackled by security. Anna warns him to never cross any red doors. Afterward, Anna takes Larry to his temporary room and leaves him with brochures that promote different versions of eternity as described by various religions. He must stay there until he chooses the right eternity for himself, and the closet is filled with all his favorite clothes. After a quick change of clothes, Larry tries to watch TV, but all the channels are ads for different kinds of eternities. Then, Larry explores the junction and finds dozens of booths promoting even more eternities. Eventually, he finds a bar, and as soon as he takes a seat, a beautiful woman sits next to him. He tries to explain he's married, but the woman keeps flirting to promote a naughty eternity. Thankfully, bartender Luke reminds her that advertising is not allowed in the bar, so she leaves. Larry wonders if the bartender is an angel, but Luke clarifies he's just a soul who got a job to stay in the junction. Since Larry is still confused, Luke shares the rules. Once he chooses an eternity, he can't switch, and he can't visit other eternities either. If he breaks a rule, stays too long, or tries to switch eternities, they'll put him in the void. It's a place with nothing but blackness for all eternity. Larry shares that his wife has cancer and he promised to take care of her, but now he feels guilty for leaving her behind, so he asks for another drink. The next morning, Anna wakes Larry up by getting on his bed. While complaining about his hangover, he asks why there are souls with jobs in the junction. Anna explains that some people haven't accepted death, while others are waiting for their loved ones. The worst ones are the ones that can't choose. Larry wants to know if Joan will die soon, but they can't get that information. Since he decides to wait for her, Anna tells him he can get a job as a janitor after the provided 7 days, but he'll also have to move to the basement. Some days pass and there's no sign of Joan. Anna tells Larry that this could take several months. So, Larry decides he'll prepare an eternity so Joan will feel at home when she arrives. That night, he writes a letter to his wife explaining everything. At the same time, the cancer finally kills Joan and she wakes up on the train. The next morning, Anna is taking Larry to his eternity. He asks her to give his letter to Joan, but she explains it's against the rules and hugs him goodbye. Larry starts making his way to the station while Joan leaves the train. On the escalator, Larry is shocked to see his wife, but she doesn't notice him. A desperate Larry quickly changes lanes and rushes back to the junction where Joan is seeing her young face in a mirror. The couple reunites with a warm hug. Joan already figured out that she's dead and scolds Larry for dying in such a stupid way. The moment is interrupted by Ryan, Joan's afterlife coordinator. He drags her away from Larry and brings her to her first husband, Luke, who has been waiting for her for 67 years. They share a very sweet and emotional reunion. However, Larry interrupts them because he was to take Joan away to his eternity. Joan starts having a panic attack when she realizes she must choose a husband to spend eternity with. So, Ryan takes her to her room. After Joan changes into a nice dress, Ryan tries to guide her through her options. At that moment, Luke comes to see her and a scared Joan slams the door in his face. Ryan thinks Luke is the better option because he was loyal for over 50 years, so he leaves them alone. Meanwhile, Larry is ranting to Anna, who reveals she used to have a relationship with Ryan. She thinks Luke is extremely handsome, so Larry points out that he's the one who gave Joan 65 years of marriage and children. Anna calls it emotional blackmail. Back to Joan. She and Luke go on a walk around the junction and behave rather awkwardly. Suddenly, two guards run nearby to catch a guy who tries to escape his eternity. One of the guards stops to say hi to Luke and immediately recognizes Joan. It seems Luke has been talking about her a lot. After they're gone, Luke explains the rules and tells Joan he loves her. He says he thought about her every single day and shares lots of sweet words before trying to kiss her, but Joan pulls away because she feels sick. She tells Luke she needs time to think and runs away. Minutes later, Larry bursts into Joan's room and brings her lots of options for their eternity. Joan freaks out and yells at him, reminding him that she needs time. She also reveals that after Larry's death, her best friend died too, which makes Larry happy because he hated her. He remembers that squatting always helped her calm down and convinces her to do it. As an old lady, Joan couldn't squat anymore, so it makes her happy to be able to do it again. Then, Larry eats some pretzels and almost chokes again, which makes Joan freak out. She explains she needs to clear her head, so Larry apologizes for being insensitive and says they can talk in the morning. When he tries to get comfortable in her bed, Joan kicks him out. Larry tries to return to his room. However, his 7 days are over, so he has to move to the basement. On the way, Larry sees a sign promoting a show by dead artist Dean Martin. Joan loves that singer, so Larry asks Anna to arrange a show. He's also disappointed to discover his new room is tiny. The next morning, Larry takes Joan to the waiting area where Anna has brought Dean Martin to sing while she plays the piano. However, the guy starts acting strange and trips on the stairs, making them realize that this is an impersonator. Larry goes to Anna to complain, and during this moment, the guy takes the chance to hit on Joan. Luke quickly comes over, pulls him back, and punches him. Then, with Ryan's help, Luke tries to give Joan flowers, but Larry interrupts again to complain more. The men start arguing, and Joan gets frustrated, yelling for them to stop. After that, she takes Anna and Ryan to her room, yells at them for a while, and asks them to find a solution. The coordinators make a long phone call to get an exception to the rule. Soon after, Joan brings her husbands into the room, and the coordinators announce that because of the unique situation, they've gotten special visas. Joan will be allowed 2 visits to an eternity, 1 with each husband. After spending time with them, she'll make her decision. The guys start arguing again and almost get into a fight, so Joan has to yell again to stop them. They decide to choose who goes first with a coin flip, but another argument almost starts, so Ryan stops them this time. Larry flips the coin, and Luke wins. During the train ride, Luke and Joan remember the old time. They keep smiling, but things are still very awkward between them. They arrive at a beautiful mountain surrounded by a clear sky and a welcoming forest. As they walk around, they have a lot of fun together and even hold hands. In the evening, they have dinner at a restaurant, and Joan keeps talking about her children and grandchildren, which makes Luke uncomfortable. He assures her he doesn't mind. What bothers him is that he couldn't have them with her, but he's glad she had a good life. Joan tells him she did wait for him for a while, but eventually, she had to move on. After that, Luke takes Joan to a building called the Archives, which can be found in every eternity. Here, every person can relive all the memories from their life. Luke and Joan watch all the significant moments of their relationship, such as their first date, their first kiss, their first intimate moment, their wedding day, and their last goodbye before Luke left for war. Joan tells Luke how much she missed him, and they share a kiss. The memories continue to play, and Luke has to watch as Larry proposes to Joan. He storms out of the building in anger, saying that Larry took advantage of a grieving woman. Joan tries to explain that it wasn't like that, but he won't listen. Meanwhile, Larry talks about Luke because he always claims Luke died in the war to appear heroic. Larry is afraid he can't match up to such a beloved memory, so Anna wants him to remind Joan why she fell in love with him. Larry doesn't know why Joan loves him, but he knows who might help. Minutes later, Larry finds Joan's best friend, Karen, who looks quite old. Karen explains that her happiest days came after her husband died because she could finally come out of the closet and find a female lover. Unfortunately, after a wonderful vacation with another woman, she had to return home and hide her sexuality for her children. Karen admits she didn't used to like Larry, but he grew on her. Larry asks her why Joan fell in love with him, and Karen says she doesn't know, but she assures him that he made her very happy. Afterward, Larry goes to Luke's room, determined to find something against him. Marks on the wall show he's been counting the days since he died, and there are sketches of Joan in a notebook. At that moment, Luke returns and accuses Larry of manipulating Joan, saying she would have been happier alone. The men get into a really pathetic fight, and during the struggle, Larry's letter falls from his pocket. When they collapse, Larry says he didn't know about Luke when he proposed, but Luke points out that he did it at the dock, which he and Joan considered their special place. In the meantime, Joan can't stand all the advertising booths, so Ryan takes her to a quiet corridor full of signs of discontinued eternities. When she admits she still doesn't know what to do, Ryan says Luke appears to be the best option. The choice is hers to make. The next day, Larry takes Joan to a beach eternity, which is very popular and therefore crowded. They chat for a while and almost kiss, but at that moment, a boy hits Larry with his ball and tells them about his horrifying death. Then the couple gets on a boat to enjoy the calmness of the ocean. Larry asks for the details of his funeral and apologizes for not being with her when she died. He also thinks their kids would be happy to see them together again. Joan feels like he's manipulating her, and an argument ensues. Joan reminds him that she's in a complicated situation, and Larry swears he would have waited for her as long as Luke did. When they return to land, Joan wants to enter the archives with Larry, but he refuses. He thinks a person can lose themselves in memories and wants to protect her, but Joan believes he's afraid of what they'll find. They sit on the shore and talk about their first date, so Larry explains he always wanted to make things better for her. In the junction, Luke finds Larry's letter and reads it. Meanwhile, Joan and Larry return from their date and share a kiss. Larry says he doesn't care where they go as long as they are together. At that moment, Luke shows up with the coordinators to tell Joan that Larry broke into his room. He also gives her the letter, and now Joan knows that Larry was almost gone. He stayed just because he saw her as he was leaving. Another argument starts, and Joan calls Larry selfish. In response, Larry says he's always been Joan's consolation prize and accuses Luke of a few things to make him look bad. Luke gets very frustrated and admits he's had a few lovers over the last 67 years, but at least he waited for her. The men want her to make a decision now, but Joan needs more time, so the coordinators take them away. Soon after, Karen visits Joan with a drink, and Joan finally breaks down. Karen comforts her and takes her to different fun booths to distract her. Joan keeps drinking and talking about her situation, so Karen reminds her that she's dead. That means she has no responsibilities to anyone and can start over with a clean slate. At the bar, Larry and Luke are drinking too much, which helps them get along and even bond. They compliment each other and say that Joan doesn't deserve them. The next morning, Joan wakes up with a hangover, but she's made her decision. She calls her husbands and says she's lucky to have them both, so maybe things happened the way they were meant to. No matter who she chooses, she'll end up feeling guilty. So, she announces she chooses neither of them and leaves with tears in her eyes. Afterward, Joan gets ready to leave and spend her eternity with Karen. Meanwhile, Larry tells Luke that he was right. He proposed on the dock because Luke was always the ghost he couldn't compete with. He wonders if he choked on the pretzel because he saw the wedding picture. In return, Luke admits he's very jealous of the life Larry built with Joan. The guys then share why their bodies chose these forms. Luke looks like the day he and Joan discussed starting a family, while Larry looks like the time Joan was pregnant with their second child. Suddenly, Larry has an idea and runs out of the room. At the station, he finds Joan on the train and asks her to step off for one last conversation. He notices her long hair and mentions that during their marriage, she always kept it short. That means she was happiest with Luke, so he wants her to go with him. At first, Joan refuses, but Larry is firm and insists it's the right decision. They both cry as they share their final hug. Sometime later, Luke and Joan are on a train heading toward their eternity. Larry is wandering around the junction, still unsure where to go, when he finds out that Anna and Ryan have gotten back together. Anna talks to Larry privately and tells him she's proud of him. She explains that she chose to stay in the junction because helping lost souls gave her a sense of purpose, and Larry helped her remember why she loves her job. In the mountains of eternity, Joan and Luke begin a new life together. They enjoy dates and make friends with other souls. In the evening, they finally let loose and have some fun. After Luke falls asleep, Joan starts to feel uncertain and decides to visit the archives, where she watches the memory of the day she first met Larry. Over the next few days, Luke keeps taking Joan on all sorts of activities with other souls, but Joan doesn't enjoy herself. Every night, she goes to the archives and relives more memories with Larry. The archives clerk warns her that spending too much time there isn't healthy and that it's important for her to move on. One night, Luke insists this is truly the perfect life, and Joan doesn't know how to respond. The next morning, Luke announces he's booked another activity, and Joan finally breaks down. She tells him she made a mistake by choosing him, causing Luke to get angry and start yelling. Joan explains that she was happiest with him because it was young, foolish love, free from the stress of mortgage, jobs, and children. However, love is supposed to be more than that. It should include the bad moments too. She also thinks that Luke is in love with the Joan from 67 years ago and never moved on, but she's changed and isn't the same person anymore. Joan then announces she'll try to go back, even if it means risking getting caught. She cries as she tells Luke she did love him, but he walks away. Some hours later, Joan is trying to make a plan to escape while practicing with a knife. After thinking a lot about the situation, Luke comes back and agrees to be her distraction. The duo goes to the archives and Luke pretends to have a breakdown in front of the clerk. While the man comforts him, Joan sneaks inside. Then Luke also goes in as a normal client. He and Joan watch their wedding memory and say a final goodbye. Joan sneaks behind the memory and goes through the red door, which takes her to a corridor with her childhood memories. At that moment, she hears the alarm and the guards coming, so she runs until she finds a door in the memory of two soldiers informing her of Luke's death. A washing machine door drops her into a memory of her arguing with Larry. The guards are still coming, so Joan blocks the door with a chair and rushes upstairs where she finds her old self. Old Joan says Larry's name before young Joan tries to hide under the bed. The guards are behind her, but she keeps on crawling until she appears on the train tracks. By walking down the tunnel, Joan manages to return to the junction. She tries to ask the receptionist about Larry, but at that moment, she receives a wanted sign and Joan has to run again. In the booth area, she bumps into Ryan and Anna, who make her hide and tell the guards she went in the opposite direction. Then she asks them what eternity Larry went to. However, the coordinators shock her with the answer. In the bar, Joan spots Larry working as a bartender. They have a drink and Joan asks Larry to join her, but she tells him it could be risky since she's a fugitive. Larry decides to go along anyway. Soon after, the couple finds themselves in a place that exactly mirrors the neighborhood they lived in throughout their whole marriage. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.